All right, fine. I'll be a gracious host. How you doing?
Little Mermaid is the scariest Disney movie by far, though.
Why the hell is Ace Blade in your Kickstarter?
Some comics. I'm getting controversial today. We're gonna get controversial today with.
My proudest moment is this interview and being able to talk to you two.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Taurus Comics in collaboration with Fourth Wall Production respectfully brings to you the 120th episode of the Four Tales podcast. I am your host, Kyron Silva from Taurus Comics. Across the way is Danny. And together we are your two award-winning blurred comic creators here to help you find your next favorite comic. We are live on the Age to Geekdom network via Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. So if you're listening and watching us live, thank you for your support. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and review this podcast because all your positive reviews, interactions help us reach a bigger audience. Why are you laughing?
It's going to take me some time to get used to not having a little purple joke intro along with my name. It's going to take you some time too, obviously.
What? No. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean?
No, you stumbled last week. You didn't give me a little purple, analogy with Ace Blade and all that stuff, and this week you stumbled again because you're not used to doing it. If you're not going to do it, it's just going to take some time. It's going to take some time to transition. You're so used to 120 episodes. You've done it over 100 times. It's going to take some time.
Are you saying you miss me doing that? Is that what
I missed you doing it last week? The very first time. I was almost hurt. I was almost hurt that you didn't do it. And I was like, I understand coming up with an analogy every week for purple pensman or whatever is it might be a headache. So I understand.
I know. I'm just trying to do something different. I want to make our show fresh and unique, and I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Hey, I understand. We gotta evolve and change with the times. We gotta keep updating it. So hey, I'm with it.
You also didn't realize I only called you Danny. I didn't even call you your full name on that.
I did notice that.
Oh.
Last time at least I got Danny J Quick. I didn't even get the Danny J Quick this time, but that's okay.
All right. Danny J Quick. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good, Kyron. I'm happy to be done with Ace Blade number 8. And I'm happy to start, kind of pushing that Kickstarter that's going on. But that's a lot of work. So I'm happy about it. I'm glad that I might be trying to get some tips from our guest today. Because they got an amazing Kickstarter going on. But how are you doing?
I'm tired, honestly.
You and your 3 jobs now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did not realize when I agreed to do these 3 jobs, it literally is 3 jobs at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize how much work would actually go into this. And I'm totally down for it. I'm totally here for it. And I'm excited for the outcome than what's happening now. But it is a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Fish is in the audience. Thank you for that. We also have people in TikTok that I know you can't see, but Pet Dance Shop 10 says, can anyone give me a follow? So please go follow Pet Dance Shop 10, whatever.
Here we go.
You said we had a guest today. We have a guest today?
We got a wonderful, talented artist and writer and letterer and a man of many talents.
Is he our first guest from the UK?
I think he might be. Yeah. I think this is our first.
Now, this isn't our first international guest.
Not our first international guest. Yeah. We had the creator from South America.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's our first guest from the UK. Mr. Roger Langridge is in the building. Well, not in the building, but
I mean,
on the show in a building. Welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for being on with us. Big fans of your work. I just subscribed to your Patreon just a little while, just this morning, I want to say, to check out your comic strips. I was doing some research on your Instagram, and I was loving what I was seeing. So definitely signed up there. So
what is your favorite thing of Roger's work?
That's a good question. The art, I love his art, but I'm a letterer, so I really respect letterers, and just how difficult lettering actually is, and having to fit a lot in a little. So so far, just seeing the amount of content he can get on a page in those 4 little panels in that square panel, it's impressive. So absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
So, Roger, for anyone that's not familiar with your work, would you mind giving us a short overview of who you are, what you do, and why you're here more than anything?
Sure. Well, I'm a cartoonist. What have I done over the years that you might have heard of? I've done the Muppet Show comic book. That's probably what I'm best known for. I did Popeye for a little while. I wrote that and drew a couple of issues. I've worked on various things for Marvel and DC. I wrote Thor the Mighty Avenger for them. I've worked on Doctor Who. I've done lots of my own things. A series called Snarked for Boom Studios, which was sort of a Lewis Carroll inspired adventure. Fred the Clown, which is a thing I self-published. I do like Danny was saying, I do a sort of a daily strip on the internet. Loads of things. I mean, I've been knocking around for about 30 years in the comics biz, so I've had time to build up a lot of credits.
Nice. Very nice. Now, we are supposed to talk about what you are here for, and that is the Darkwing Duck graphic novel from Dynamite, correct?
Yes. My participation in that is that I wrote a series which was like a spin-off of Darkwing Duck called Justice Ducks, which is like a superhero team with Darkwing as a member and various other characters from the Darkwing universe. So I wrote a 5-issue series of that, which is collected into a book for the Kickstarter, along with, I believe, every other Darkwing comic ever produced, going back to the 90s, I think, and certainly the Boom Studios stuff from the early 2000s. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge pile of content for you to support.
And if anybody wants to support, I have the QR code at the top of the screen. You guys can scan that, and it takes you right to the page, the landing page for the Kickstarter, which is doing amazing. And you did the Justice Ducks part of that. And how many issues of that?
That's correct.
4 or 5?
It was 5 in the end. I initially pitched 4, and then they threw another one in, so it ended up being 5. But yeah, no, that's they basically still contain stories, but the final issue sort of wraps everything up. So there's sort of a thread running through it, a theme running through it that gets resolved in the final issue, which hasn't come out yet. So
that's wild. No spoilers, I didn't know that was your contribution to this. I was in doing research. I was so caught up in your comic strips. Like I said, that the Darkwing, the Justice Ducks, I didn't know that. So that's Darkwing, Gizmo, Morgana. Is Neptunia in there?
Mm-hmm.
Neptunia, yeah, Neptunia. That's right. We've got Launchpad as well, and Stigmat. Yeah, I think that's all of them.
I think
have I missed anyone? I think that's all.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I know that's for us. I'm a traditional, superhero comics guy. Kyron has like an encyclopedic knowledge of comic books, but I'm newer to comics, so I'm into superhero stuff. So Justice Ducks is definitely right up my alleyway, and Darkwing, but the purple. I'm the purple guy, so
yeah. I noticed the purple theme.
So I love it. That's good stuff.
I have to do everything purple to appease Danny, otherwise he won't be on my show, and I have no viewers. So that's why I do
it. Terrible.
I'm glad it comes to an arrangement that works for you.
I don't pay him. I just say I'll do everything in purple, and he's like, "All right, I'm fine to do that."
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But no, that's awesome. So My question is, how does something like this, come together with Boom Studios putting together this huge problem? Like, do they reach out to you and say, we want you to be a part of this, we want your stories to be part of it? Is there, I'm not going to ask about compensation and things like that, but what are the agreements like? What is it? Who gets that initial conversation going?
Before you answer, we do want to specify this Dynamite Studios or Dynamite Entertainment is the one.
I'm sorry,
that
I said, yeah.
But then I think there are portions of Boom Studio work in there.
Yeah, they're collecting some of the Boom Studios stuff that was in a previous run. But yeah, the stuff I did was for Dynamite, and yeah, but I didn't know that there was going to be a Kickstarter. I didn't know this was going to be collected. I literally found out about it when they told me that it was coming up, and could I publicize it? So yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the beast when you're working with Disney. You don't actually have control over any of it. So
it seems like this is ours.
It just happened. It pops up in unusual places. And you go, I didn't know that was happening. Sometimes see foreign editions of it if I go overseas, and I've never heard of that one. That one's new to me. But that's the nature of the beast.
I love it. I heard Dennis Cowan, he did a long run with The Question, and they recently put out a hardcover, collection of all those stuff. And he didn't, same thing with him. He didn't know that it was coming out until it came out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does that happen? But, like you say, you're working with big companies, and, they might not, I'm sure they got people that could reach out, but, I guess if they don't have to reach out to you, they don't. And then,
yeah. Well, if somebody else owns it, they're not obliged to tell you, I guess.
Right. But at least, it's good for them to reach out and ask you to continue to plug it and to be involved with the Kickstarter and things like that, because it gives creators like me and Kyron an opportunity to talk to you. So that's great. That's great.
No.
Yeah. No, hopefully it gets people to look at the work who might not have seen it otherwise. So that's,
Now, like good. Danny, you're an artist and a writer. You did the writing, though, on the Justice Ducks series. But you also provided some of the covers for it, right?
Yeah. There were variant covers for all of the issues, and I did one variant cover for each one.
So, which do you prefer doing, though, art or the writing, art or the writing aspect of comics?
I think they're both rewarding in different ways. I find writing a little bit more difficult. I started off intending just to be an artist, and I only started writing because I didn't have anything to draw. I needed something to draw, so I wrote scripts for myself to draw. And that's, people responded to the scripts as much as they did to the art, and people offered me writing work, and I sort of fell into writing without really intending to do it. But the stuff that's sort of had the most acclaim, I suppose, is the stuff I've either written entirely or written and drawn myself. The stuff that I've just drawn on my own, it's got its fans, but it's never had that kind of visibility. So yeah, apparently I'm a writer. Who knew?
You remember that point where you're like, all right, I better just focus primarily on my writing because that's what's paying bills in a way. Do you remember that aspect or that time in your life when that actually happened?
I don't know. I'm just, I take work whenever it comes, and I still get offered to just draw stuff that I don't write. So I'm happy to do that as well. As a freelancer, you tend not to be super choosy unless you've actually got, no time to do it. You take whatever comes along, and it all pays the bills.
But I've seen your on Instagram again. I saw some of the commissions that you did. And your art style is fantastic. I love it. I saw the Dick Tracy that you did. You did the thing, I want to say, with the newspaper stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like you said, you take the work where you can get it, and that definitely is a part of working in the industry. If a project comes on and somebody thinks of you, or they want you to do this portion or that portion, they want you to variant covers, they want you to do, write something or even lettering. Have you done, which one have you done more of in the industry? Has it been writing, art, or lettering?
I suppose art by default, because a lot of the stuff that I've written, I've also drawn. But I mean, in terms of actual page count, it's probably lettering, I think, because I've been lettering the comic strip in Doctor Who magazine over here. since the late 90s. So that's, a 25-year streak of lettering every month. And I also letter a lot of my own comics when I draw them. I like to do that. So, and that, all my self-published stuff, quite a lot of my professional work I've lettered as well. So in terms of actual page count, it's probably lettering that I've done the most of. But I guess inside I still think of myself more as an artist, really, or as a cartoonist, I suppose. I think the most rewarding thing is to write and draw something entirely from scratch. And writing for other people can be rewarding, but in a different way. And it's not, it's not mine at the end of the day. In the same way that doing my own stuff
definitely feel you on that. Brandon Jackson, friend of the podcast, who runs Comics Are Dope, he commented, did you see that Tad Stone said his favorite of the new Darkwing is Roger Justice Ducks? He said it feels like Carl Banks. That's the high praise right there. That's high praise.
Oh yeah. I literally learned to read by reading Carl Barks Duck comics. Kind of, my first and sort of still one of my primary influences. So yeah, thank you, Tad. Thank you. That's lovely to hear.
Do you have a favorite out of all the Justice Ducks characters since you wrote 5 issues of it? Did you have a favorite during that time?
I really enjoyed writing Darkwing. I think because he's got that Donald Duck quality, he reminds me of Karl Barks' version of Donald Duck in that he's got these contradictions going on, these tensions. He's trying to be a responsible parent, but he's also very selfish. He wants to be the center of attention, but he wants to be a loner. He's got all these tensions going on, and that makes him, a little bit challenging and a little bit more interesting to write than somebody who's, only hitting one note all the time. So he's more rounded as a character, and more fun to write as a result.
We have another question from the audience. Michael Watson asks, "How did you even get into this world?" I'm assuming we talk about comic books, artwork, things like that.
I first started making comics when I was about 7 years old. Just for fun. My brother and I did comics together. He would write them and I'd draw them, or sometimes we'd switch around. I'd write them and he'd draw them. Did mini comics, and one of those mini comics, when I was about 20 years old, 21, I sent one of them to Fantagraphics in America, trying to get people to look at my work and get some constructive feedback and all that sort of thing. And they offered to publish some comics featuring the characters in the mini comic. So I had this published credit, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I can make a stab at this. And this was in New Zealand. I mean, you probably tell from my accent that I'm not British. I grew up in New Zealand, and I moved here in 1990 to try and become a cartoonist. So I knocked on loads of doors and basically, used up my savings while I was trying to get work, and somehow pulled it off. That's kind of how I got into comics. And here I am, clinging on by my fingernails 30 years later.
Well, I guess talking about clinging on by fingernails, Michael also asked, would you recommend a creative to be multi-skilled like you are to be able to survive and thrive?
Well, the reason I learned all these different disciplines is so that I could do my own stuff from scratch, without having to rely on collaborators. Collaboration's fun and it can be really rewarding, but unless you've got a bit of money behind you, it's quite difficult to compensate them. So if you can take on some of those things, then it's easier to produce your own stuff, and it's easier to get projects sort of pitches together because you can do, I don't know, the lettering or the coloring or whatever it might be. Just as a matter of survival and expediency, it's useful to at least dabble in all these things, even if you end up using other people as collaborators later on. If you've drawn something and you know how that works and you know the challenges, you're going to be a better writer because you will know what artists don't like doing or how they like to get scripts or whatever it might be. so you'll just have an insight into what they're dealing with if you've worked on the other side of it. So yeah, I mean, even if that's not what you want to do in the long term, I think it's really valuable to just.
I think that's an awesome approach to have. It kind of provides some empathy when you have experienced the things that other people have experienced in the workplace, even outside of comics. If you've experienced what your coworkers have done, you can kind of empathize with them more, and it gives you a better perspective of the work that you're doing, and specifically when it comes to creative outlets. I know in my experience that being a letterer has made me learning how to I learned how to letter because I thought it was probably the easiest part of making comics, and I was like, oh, I can learn how to do that. I don't need to pay a letterer to do it. I can learn how to do it. I'm a graphic designer. But then learning to letter, you realize that it's actually it can be very challenging, and it's just an excellent approach to have in a collaborative work like comic books. So props to you for that.
Yeah, I think so.
You're saying that you currently live in London, but you're from New Zealand. Just personally, what's the biggest differences between the two that you've noticed as far as the location?
Well, the climate for a start. I grew up in the North Island, which is quite, I think the official designation is it's mildly tropical or subtropical, and London really isn't. We have 2 sunny days a year, and we call that summer. The rest of the summer, the rain is a little bit warmer. That's the main difference, yeah, there's that. I mean, in terms of working in comics, obviously there's a comic industry here, and there isn't in New Zealand because the population is much smaller. So there's a long tradition here of comic weeklies, and we've still got 2000 AD coming out every week, and the Beano, and a tradition of kids comics as well, which hasn't gone away, although it's diminished in recent years. It's still going. And we never really had that thing that happened in the 90s where all the kids comics have disappeared overnight. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the comics culture, it's quite different. Different expectations, different. There are people here who consider themselves comics fans who don't read anything except 2000 AD, because that's like a complete comics experience. You've got this sort of universe with all these different strips that run into one another occasionally, and otherwise, have all this variety, and you can just buy that every week because it's a weekly, and that could be a satisfying comic habit for somebody. So yeah,
wow,
it's a different culture.
Come out weekly like that. That's a lot of work to put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently the editor has these spreadsheets, and when he goes on holiday, nobody else can understand what they mean. It's just the whole thing would collapse if he died tomorrow.
Oh man, we should probably start spreading the wealth there. Yeah, I understand. I see. Judge Dredd is in 2000 AD.
Yeah, that's where
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that. See, you learn something new every day. I love it. Okay. I'm always fascinated. Again, I know we're supposed to be talking about Darkwing, but I'm always fascinated with.
Everybody should go to the Kickstarter and back that right now.
Definitely check out the Kickstarter. But I'm always fascinated with artists and writers who can do comic strips. Another thing that I underestimated how tough it is. We had on another creator who does a weekly strip, and just writing something that's concise and impactful or quippy or funny or in 4 to 6 panels is one of the toughest things that I've done as a writer. And to be able to do it consistently, like, I think that's a real skill. Do you have any tips, or is that just something that you've learned over time to be able to do?
Well, a bit of both. I think my biggest tip is probably just do a lot of it and read other strips. I was sort of influenced growing up by reading old classic newspaper strips like E.C. Seagal's Popeye stuff, and there's this huge book which you've probably heard of called the Smithsonian Book of Newspaper Comics, which was a real eye opener to me. It had all these classic strips like Gasoline Alley and, like I say, Thimble Theatre, Barney Google, all these wonderful strips from the early part of the 20th century. And that was a real eye opener to me, and sort of made me really excited about maybe doing that. I always wanted to do a daily strip after I read that book. And so, yeah, I've attempted to do one a few times. And the most recent attempt started when I started doing my Patreon. I wanted to have something that I could share every day with my subscribers. And that seemed like something I could do. I didn't have a lot of work on at the time, so I sort of got into it slowly, and it would sort of take me half a day. And then I started getting more sort of professional work, because these things, go up and down. And so I started doing it just first thing in the morning. I'd get up really, really early, spend like an hour and a half doing the strip, and then do my professional work for the rest of the day. And got into a rhythm doing that. And it happened, I mean, it wasn't planned this way, but the pandemic started a couple of months into the strip. So I had this, big theme to make stories around, So while I was doing the strip, I was sort of chronicling my experience with the pandemic as well. And that meant that I had this, I collected into a book at the end of the year, and it was quite a cohesive book because it had this sort of strong through line going through it. So that was really, lucky. It's not like I planned that or anything. I had, it sort of got me up to speed, I think, just doing that. By the time a lot of the pandemic stuff was behind us, I was in a rhythm and I could sort of keep on doing it, and I sort of had the basics down by then.
Wow.
So yeah, but just do a lot of it. That's all I can say.
So you were literally doing them daily instead of, like, I know in my brain it makes sense to do a bunch of them and then release them daily. But you were literally.
No, it's first
Wow.
morning. Yeah, just do it first thing in the morning.
That's great.
So now, Danny, you know what you need to do to get Ace Blade Adventures as a weekly comic strip, and
Just do a lot
start
of
doing that now.
them. Right. Yeah. Do a lot of them and learn to draw myself, I guess.
I mean, you can hire Roger to draw it for you too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm gonna try next year.
Right. Right.
You have drawn a lot of stuff and worked on a lot of projects over the past 30 so years that you've been making books. Is there one thing that truly stands out as your favorite thing to work on at this point?
Yeah, my self-published comic Fred the Clown is probably my favorite thing. It's this character called Fred the Clown. He's not actually a clown so much as like more a silent movie clown than a circus clown. You know what I mean? He's sort of influenced by my love of old films like Buster Keaton and that sort of era of movies. I mean, Keaton particularly is a big hero of mine. There's no sort of continuity to it. That each story is self-contained, and I'll switch styles from story to story, or scenarios. It's very much like an old Looney Tunes cartoon in that way. In that it's sort of like starts from scratch every time. But I just put everything I had into it. I tried every style that I could think of. I'd do strips that were based on board games or old penny dreadfuls or silent movies, like I say. I just, anything I could think of. I did that on the internet for a while, collected them into self-published comics, and then those in turn were collected into a book that Fantagraphics published. So, and that got nominated for an Eisner Award. It didn't win, but it was nice to be on the list. So yeah, that's probably my the thing I'm proudest of.
And that Fred the Clown comic, I mean, that can be read on your website, right?
There are some strips online somewhere. I haven't. Yeah, I think if you dig down on my blog, you probably find them. The old ones are still up there, but yeah, I don't have. It's sort of jumped around a few places because it was originally on my own website, and then there was a website called Modern Tales which collected a whole lot of webcomics, so it moved to there for a while. and then that ended, and I re-upped them to a blog, and then I did other stuff on the blog, so they got buried sort of down the feed. So I don't know how easy they are to find, but they're there somewhere. But you can still
I do see the book on
buy the
Amazon right now, so that's definitely awesome. Definitely awesome.
Just gonna make my way to Amazon right now and buy a copy. I'm just saying. The man says it's his favorite work that he did. I'm gonna check it out.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that in comics, like, you can do things that are, extremely personal. I just read a fantastic, amazing superhero story, Hot Shot. An issue of Hot Shot. I got a sneak preview for it. I want to say it's issue number 12, and it's really personal to the creator, Michael Watson, who was just in the comments. It's just an amazing story. And then you can do things, that are fantastical and, have no connection to you, just, out things that are out in your mind. Which ones or I'll say, which ones do you enjoy more, as far as creating? Do you enjoy doing the more personal stories, or just the wild things that you can just create in your mind?
I don't know if there's a difference, actually. When I worked on Thor the Mighty Avenger for Marvel, it was Thor. I'm doing superhero comics, but there were aspects of that I wasn't entirely conscious of at the time that were basically autobiographical. It had Thor coming to Earth from Asgard, like I came to Britain from New Zealand, and meeting somebody and falling in love and staying there, and that's basically what happened to me. And I put the dots together later on, but that was absolutely an autobiographical comic, as well as being a superhero.
I definitely understand what you mean. Just being able to, you sometimes you don't know that you're writing from experience until later, right?
Yeah. I mean, it all goes in the mix, and you don't know, things bubble up without you always being conscious of it.
I think that's one cool thing about these podcasts, even though there are entirely too many podcasts these days. Being able to talk about the things that you've experienced, kind of can give you a perspective. Having, even with us indie creators, I spent some time in Iraq and in the military, and I didn't realize how much of that stuff seeped into the comic books that I made until I started talking about it. So I think that's one of the cooler things, and like you said, you can definitely create some wild, fantastical stuff, and it still be deeply personal. So that's a great perspective.
Yeah, I mean, your experiences are going to inform how you approach everything. It's just natural for that to happen.
All right, well, we do want to remind everybody to go to Kickstarter, back the Darkwing Duck campaign. You have a few more days to do that. You guys are blowing it out of the water. I had a question just to wrap up Darkwing Duck in itself, I guess, before we move on to quick takes. Darkwing Duck is a very memorable character, along with the rest of the Disney block of series. Has there been maybe another Disney cartoon that you maybe want to write or draw that you haven't gotten to yet?
I'd really like to do Uncle Scrooge at some point. That's my Karl Barks love coming through again. I just love that whole that world, and Barks's influence is so big on me that it would be an absolute dream come true to walk in those shoes.
So if you could hop on Scrooge there, what would your story be? Just throwing it out there.
Oh, who knows? You never know until you. It's not like I've got one in the barrel waiting to go. I'd have to sort of sit down and thrash it out. But something that's hits all of the beats that Barks used to hit, where it's funny and thrilling and touching and does all those things.
Yeah, those older my kids. They still enjoy. Once Disney Plus came out, and Darkwing was on Disney Plus for a little while. I don't know if it still is, but I'm sure it still is. But I was like, man, I used to love these cartoons, and they still enjoy them. Like, those are things that even this younger generation today can still really get into. And I think it's impactful because of the touching nature of the stories. Even though they're funny and fantastical, they're still grounded in real emotion. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyron, I'm ready. I'm ready when you are. I know it's time for quick takes, and I'm ready to do it if you are. Even though you stole one of my questions earlier, I'm ready to I'm ready to do it.
I stole nothing. I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right. So, quick takes. If you've never seen the show before, quick takes is a rapid Q&A section where we grill our guests on their deepest, darkest secrets that we found on the internet. Okay. So we'll have 5 questions. We'll have 5 questions that you'll have 45 seconds each to answer. And just little things to get to know you better, or for our audience to get to know you better. So we'll start with the first one. I want to say on your Instagram, you have an epitaph that says he drew the Muppets and died. Would you like to expound on that at all?
Yeah, that's an adaptation of a quote by Spike Milligan, who was a comedy writer, created the Goon Show, helped Peter Sellers launch his career. That was what he wanted on his epitaph. He wrote the Goons and died, because he got fed up with everybody saying that was all he did that was significant, because he did loads and loads of other stuff, and that's kind of, I have a little bit of that sort of relationship with the Muppets, because I've done loads of other stuff, but that's basically what people remember me for. So, it's sort of slightly passive aggressive.
I love it.
I get it now. Mine would be he wrote, saw, and died.
Yep.
Right.
I'm changing mine to Ace Blade right now. He wrote Ace Blade and died. I love it. Okay. Question number 2, and this is partially the one that Kyron stole from me earlier, but I'm going to change it up a little bit. So, in your time in New Zealand and in your time in London, I'm sure you experienced different things. Like earlier, you said that there's a comic book community in London that isn't present in New Zealand. So, I'm going to ask, what are your favorite things in London, and what are your favorite things in New Zealand?
Well, London's where I met my wife and had my kids, so my family's probably my favorite thing in London. And as far as New Zealand goes, I mean, there is a community back there, in a comics community. It's just nobody can make any money out of it. But I really love that comic community. It's all very grassroots, but everybody's doing it for the love of it. So there's no cynicism at all. Nobody's doing it because they think they're going to make $1 million. They're doing it because they're doing the thing they love doing. And I really find that purity of it, even though it's not financially rewarding, I find that really, really great to be a part of.
I love that. Okay, that's a great answer. Okay, so question 3. And this is a question that we ask most of the creators that we have on our show. In 45 seconds, I want you to tell us the best parts of creating and the worst parts of creating.
For me, the best part of creating is probably when I've got a finished thing that I've done entirely on my own, written, drawn, even printed. Something that I've made that wouldn't exist if I hadn't existed. So that's probably the best, because it's really satisfying to make something from nothing. The worst part is probably just trying to fit everything in. I've got projects that I would love to work on that I may never get around to, just because there are only so many hours in the day and I have to earn a living, and so my personal projects go put to the back of the queue all the time. Time machine, that's what we want.
Right.
That'll fix it.
Okay. And this next one is kind of specific to one of your comic strips. I can't remember the specific one that you did, but there was one where the character went into the barber shop and he was like, just take a little off the sides, and then the barber was like, do you want me to do your eyebrows? And he was like, what's is there something wrong with them? My wife is a cosmetologist. She's been a hairstylist for our entire relationship for 20 years, and I've noticed that sometimes barbers and hairstylists can make us a little self-conscious. Is that what you were talking about in that strip, and would you like to expound on it?
Well, pretty much. I mean, that's what happened. It's a literal thing that happened to me. But yeah, the first time it happened, they didn't even ask. Somebody just got a one of these little mini razors and just went before I even had a chance to react. And that was oh, so I'm doing that now, am I? Okay, I've reached that age. Okay, I get it. It's a little reminder of your own mortality, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they intentionally try to make you feel self-conscious. They just do, and you're making yourself a little bit vulnerable because they're snipping around, it's sharp implements around your vital organs and things. It's inevitably going to make you feel self-conscious.
I love it. Okay. So for this last question, we always like to do a top 5 list. So we'll ask you for a top 5 in a subject off the top of your head. And since you've had a long career in comics and you've done a lot of different projects, I want to know what are your top 5 characteristics? What are the top 5 characteristics that you would think a person would need to make it in comics?
Okay. One, I think self-discipline. Actually, being able to sit at the drawing board or the typewriter or whatever it might be, the computer, and put the hours in. 2, the willingness to make a few mistakes, get things wrong while you're learning. I think a lot of people maybe panic and don't follow through if they can't get it right first time. I haven't got long, have I? 3, some money, a job probably to begin with.
Or 3 in Kyron's case.
4, yeah, or support, a supportive spouse maybe. Let's call that number 4. Number 5, love for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
I suppose
the passion always comes in handy in those late hours, for sure. For sure, the love for what you're doing absolutely comes in handy. I was thinking about what you were just saying about the artist community in New Zealand and how everybody's doing it for the love of it. I think that that love is kind of underrated. These days a lot of people want to they just want to create something to make a movie out of it. They want to create something with the hope that it becomes a big hit and it makes them millions of dollars because they've seen the Avengers and Dark Knight and all these things. But 90 times out of 100, you're going to be making things that go to a limited audience, that going to go to that a lot of people aren't going to see. And like you said, a lot of your ideas may not even make it on the page. So it definitely helps to have that passion and love for it, to be making it, because like you said, actually making something is a fulfillment in itself.
It sounds like you're trying to say comics don't make money in its own way.
It's definitely more difficult than I thought it would be, but the passion, the love for what you're making definitely can keep you going through those tough spells.
Yeah, I think ultimately making something you're proud of is the reward, and if you get paid for it, that's a bonus.
Absolutely.
Quick Take sponsor.
Thank you for doing that. Quick Takes is sponsored by. I don't have a sponsor this week.
That's not Gemini anymore?
Oh yeah, Gemini. Sponsored by Gemini Mailers. Use the code AceBlade to get 10% off on all your Gemini orders. Oh, Kyron is so good, man. Kyron is so good at this thing, man. I love this dude. Kyron is always prepared. Thank you so much.
Are you sure you guys aren't being too slick?
Sometimes. All right, sir. Well, it's been fun having you on. Is there anything you want to share before we end our show? Anything you're coming up with, working in the future you want us to check out?
Let's see. I've got. I'm trying to think of something that you can buy in America. I've got some stuff going on in Britain. I'm doing a regular series for a kids comic called Monster Fun, and that series is called Sally Astro, about a little girl alien who gets into trouble. I'm writing a series called Pandora Perfect, which is sort of What If Mary Poppins Was a Con Artist? And she's got a robot sidekick. That's for the Judge Dredd magazine. And I've got a book coming out in October called The Prohibition Era, which is written by Jason Viola and drawn by me. It's part of First Second's History Comics line. So it's educational but fun as well. You know, it's got a through line of John Barleycorn, the character who's like a symbol of alcohol in political cartoons of the early 20th century. He's sort of leading you through the history of America's relationship with alcohol. So that's coming out in October.
We definitely have to check that out and keep us informed. If you want to come back in the future, you're more than welcome to hop on. Just reach out to us and we can keep up with you. But where can people maybe check out your work and follow you on social media?
Well, on the socials, I'm mainly active on Blue Sky and Instagram as Hotel Fred. And my website is called hotelfred.com. And you can get links to various things like my Patreon and my web store and all that sort of stuff from there.
Yeah.
So
next time when you're on, we're going to primarily focus on your website because you have a lot of stuff on there that we didn't even get to. And we want to make sure everybody checks you out and, read your stuff because you have good stuff there.
Absolutely.
Danny,
thank you.
Where can people check out your work?
If you want to find me, the best place to go is our website, fourthwallpros.com, where you will be able to get Ace Blade number 8 right after the Kickstarter. And
my first book as editor-in-chief of Fourth Wall.
Yep, Kyron's first book as editor-in-chief for Fourth Wall.
Which I had nothing to do on that book, but I'll still take the credit. That's on my
I listed you as CFO one time just because, so don't mind that. I'm going to give you some credit if it's due or not. But if you want to find me on social media, it's at the Ace Blade on all social media platforms. Kyron, where can people find you?
You can find me at touristcomics.com. I am also on all social medias at Tourist Comics. And if this is your first time checking out our podcast, you can go to our website, which is fourtalespodcast.com. That is the number 4, TALES podcast.com. You can listen to all our previous episodes, buy some merchandise, and help us out. Join us, though, next week at the same time where we're going to have John Robinson on, talk about his book, Scorpio. And I think he has another book coming out. I can't remember. But after that, we have a change in our schedule after that. We are going to be moving to Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern after next week. So next week's our last time on Saturdays at this time. After that, we'll be moving to Fridays because Danny was complaining about Saturdays being too busy for him and he didn't want to do this anymore. And so I have to appease him. So after next week, join us here Fridays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But until then, everybody, sayonara, goodbye, and please take care of yourselves.
Thanks.
Music provided by my brother, Quix Made It. Find him online in YouTube, Instagram, and SoundCloud.
I want to know what it is Quick is trying to say.
Thank you.